Okay, there was some confusion by many students on what delta x means in the lab. I'm going to explain this to you. Unfortunately, it probably should have been explained in detail in either intermediate algebra or college algebra, so I'm just reviewing what I thought most of you understood. So I'm going to start the explanation by reviewing slope, which is rise over run, is what you would have been initially taught the meaning of slope. Now, how to calculate slope, you would have been taught to take the second y value and subtract the first y value to get that rise. And you would have been taught, second y value minus the first y value, and taking the second x value and subtracting the first x value would have given you the run. Now, I'm going to introduce, or I hopefully reintroduce, the symbols delta x and delta y to you. Big thing, what does delta mean? Well, what we're really talking about is distance. And distance begins with the letter D. However, the Greeks used the letter delta for the letter D. Makes the same sound. So when we talk about rise over run, what we're really talking about is a distance from here to here, which represents the distance we have traveled in the vertical direction. And I'm going to use the letter D for distance, and y gives us the vertical direction. So distance in the vertical direction, how much change we've had in that y value is the distance we have traveled. Also, on my run, that is the distance I've traveled in the horizontal direction. So the total change from one x value to the second x value is actually a distance. And that distance is horizontally. So delta x and delta y represent the symbols for distance. Now, in the lab, they were asking you to utilize the symbol delta x equals some value. Let's let delta x equal the value 2. It doesn't really matter what the distance is. We're going to talk about how to use that distance on a calculator. So let's say I want to examine some point on a function, and that point on the function was, let's say, on f of x, I am examining the point 3, 7. And I'd like to have delta x on my calculator to equal 2. And I want the point 3, 7 to be in the center. So that means the total distance from the smallest x value to the largest x value should be 2. What is the smallest x value? It's my x minimum. And my largest x value on my computer screen is called the x maximum. So if I was to take the largest x value, which is called the x maximum, and I was to subtract the smallest x value, the x minimum, then the total distance I would have traveled in the x direction would be 2. So that's what I want to accomplish. But when I do that, I'm going to put a number line here. Let's just look at the x values around 3 vertically. So delta x around 3, the distance I am going to go around 3, that total distance in the x direction must be 2 units. However, I'm only going to go half that distance to the left of 3 and half that distance to the right of 3. So when I slice delta x in half, that distance is going to be one value, 1 unit to the left of 3 and 1 unit to the right of 3. So if I start at 3 and I travel 1 unit to the left, I end up at 2. And if I travel 1 unit to the right, I end up at 4. This is my second x value. This is my first. x2 minus x1 is 2. This is also the maximum x value, or x max, on my computer screen. And this would be my x minimum value, or the minimum value of x on my computer screen. And the distance between those two is in fact 2. So that's how we're using the symbol delta x, the distance you can travel horizontally on your computer screen.